Hello, and welcome to Finding Your North Star, the HGKC podcast series where we talk to prominent business people about their experiences and challenges of innovation. In this series of Somerset stories, we're inviting our guests to share both their personal experience and a strategic perspective of a county that presents a unique combination of challenges and opportunities. Somerset is the location for nationally significant developments like Hinkley Point C and the Agratas EV battery factory. It also has one of the biggest concentrations of precision engineering in Europe and colleges offering apprenticeships to record numbers of students. But Somerset is also a county with a declining birth rate and an ageing population. It's an area of outstanding natural beauty. The Mendips, the Quantock Hills and the Somerset Levels. It has coastline reaching from Minehead to Portishead. But beyond the M5, it also has poor transport links, a shortage of affordable housing and low social mobility. I'm Sarah Chilcott, Director at HGKC, and I'm delighted that in this podcast, we'll be exploring the most northern part of Somerset with Neil Douglas, co-founder and now non-executive director at VIMBO Innovations in Portishead. VIMBO is a global engineering business which delivers intelligent electrical integrity solutions that help organisations optimise their performance and prevent failures in land, sea and subsea assets. We're really delighted to have Neil with us here today, and welcome, Neil.
Thank you, Sarah. Thanks for the introduction. Good to be here.
Great. So I mentioned Portishead in my introduction, and VIMBO is indeed based in Portishead. I can see a beautiful shot behind you there. So I wanted to start really by asking you how you chose this location to build your business. Give us a bit of a story.
I guess the story was I graduated in Bristol University and then worked in the same company in Nailsea. Currently it's called Baker Hughes for 22 years. And I guess after 22 years, decided it was a time to do something different. I obviously socialised, I'm very familiar with the area. I really didn't want to move. So it was a logical step to set up a business in the area rather than move home. So we originally set up in an old converted barn in Tickenham, stayed there for 18 months, 2 years. We were growing and we then took on an office in Portishead, and then a further 2 years after that we moved to our existing office, which is near the marina in Portishead, and we've continued expanding within that one location. We were lucky in that we were the first into the business park, and as we grew, we could take on additional units around our main office. So yes, we were driven because I already lived here. Thereafter, if we look at the business, it really doesn't matter where in the country it's located, and North Somerset, Portishead, that suits us just fine.
Yeah, fantastic. So it was that engineering background that drew you to North Somerset in the first place, to Nailsea, as you said. Is that your background?
So yeah, my original degree was in electronics and electrical engineering. So I was an engineer, maybe still am an engineer. But yes, the region, it obviously has a lot of engineering companies, and all the universities in the area have strong engineering degree courses. The region has a good pool of resources, technical resources specifically, both graduate and experienced engineers. And so for that reason, there's good feedstock for the business, both from other businesses in the region and from the universities.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. And as I understand it, that over the years you've worked with lots of different local educational establishments on quite a variety of research projects. There's been sponsorships, apprenticeships. So I wonder maybe if you could talk a little bit about the value that's added to VIMBO and what role you think those research partnerships should play in shaping the county's economic future.
The region, and if I just expand it beyond North Somerset, but the universities which we have access to, from the University of West of England, Bristol, Bath, and then the colleges from Bridgewater to the City of Bristol to Western College, there's a great pool of academic expertise which we can turn to, and also a great pool of talent that we can use within the universities. As you said there in your introduction, we've run a number of knowledge transfer partnerships with some of the universities, and that's where you sponsor a student, but it's part funded by Innovate UK. So not only do you get the student doing some work for you, but they get the benefit of using the university's research facilities and academic expertise. Some of those KTP students have gone on to work for Viper after the end of the 1 year, 18-month programme. We've sponsored PhD students. We've just entered into consulting or research contracts directly with the university. And then, as you said, we work with the local colleges in terms of apprenticeships for the junior graduates. So if I look back over the time, yes, we've utilised the universities extensively, benefited. Whenever you enter into a government-funded scheme such as Innovate UK and KTPs, you always have to go back and provide some form of, I guess, GVA that investment has made. And it always comes out that there's been a significant improvement in either the profitability or the revenues of the business. And indeed, that obviously leads to more employment.
Yeah, absolutely. It's great to hear that. And I think Innovate UK is not always an obvious choice for people when they're looking at funding and those partnerships with the universities. Particularly, we have such strong universities on our doorstep here across the whole of the southwest, really, but particularly in the northern part of the Somerset, Bristol and Bath. You've been involved in quite a number, so it might be difficult to pin them down, but I wonder whether there's any kind of advice you could give in terms of approaching those kind of partnerships for people that might be listening to this podcast.
I think for any of them, no matter what your relationship with the university, it's the individuals, and it's so important from a knowledge transfer partnership perspective. Absolutely getting the right student is key. So we have spent many months interviewing the student with the university to get the best research student, and that certainly makes or breaks a project. We've always seen good commitment from the universities, and it's also important to have a good mentor and have company commitment to these programs. A lot of the large companies, they sign on the dotted line, they get a KTP student, and that's almost the end of it. It is a three-party relationship, and the more each party puts in, the more successful the program is. But as I say, that is just one example. We had a very good PhD student who we sponsored, and their whole thesis was based on work for Viper. And again, exceptional outcome added to the value of Viper in terms of moving forward our technology. And again, that was down to very good university professor supporting the PhD student, and then an exceptional PhD student as well.
And as you say, colleges play a really important part as well in terms of apprenticeships and bringing younger people through into the business.
Absolutely. And we see certainly with some of the larger engineering companies in the area, colleges like Western, they will modify their apprenticeship courses to match what the companies need. So again, the relationships are just so important between the colleges, the student and the businesses in the region. And certainly my experience is Western College is very good at creating those commercial relationships to make sure that the courses they're offering and the students they're delivering match the needs of businesses in the region.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know we've interviewed some of the college principals as part of this series as well, and had other conversations with them more broadly. And they're always encouraging business owners and directors to talk to them and tell them what they need so that they can get those programs right. So it's good to see it from the other side as well.
Very good.
I think maybe let's just skip on a few years. I'm sure there are lots of challenges through those few years, but having co-founded Viper back in 2007, you had a partial exit to a management buyout in 2024. So interestingly, I think you remained as a minority shareholder, which isn't always the case, and you're now non-exec director there as well. So I wonder if you could talk to us a little bit about why an MBO, how that came about, and how it's been for you personally taking a different view, a different role in the business that you founded, that's been your baby for such a long time.
Absolutely. There's been a couple of phases, I guess. The first one, in about 2020, myself and my business partner decided that now was the right time for us to move on, but it didn't have to happen immediately. So we started planning for an exit, and we brought in a new managing director in 2020. And obviously part of his remit was to position the business for an exit. So he knew what he was taking on. He came in with a great pedigree, track record for doing just that. Everything was delayed a little bit because of COVID. I think it was 6 months before he met the staff in person. So that was actually a bigger transition, because I went from full-time managing director to actually just, I won't say shadowing, but we brought in a managing director on a full-time basis, and I was there just to help with the transition. And it was a very long induction period, shall we say, not in terms of proving him, but in terms of handing over the role. And I guess when I did that, that was the case, right? If you bring in an MD, he has to take full responsibility and accountability for the business. So all of a sudden you are fully hands off. So the transition to the sale of the business in 2024 was actually a little bit easier, because I've been winding down over those 4 years. But when we started in 2020, all we had in our mind was an exit, and that could have been a trade sale. I guess it could have been an EOT, an employee ownership trust. It could have been a traditional MBO, private equity supported management team buyout. What we actually ended up with in 2024 was maybe not quite such a traditional MBO. It's known as a VIMBO, and that is where the vendors effectively provide some of the financing for the management team to buy the company. So it's over a number of years. So you're right, it was a partial exit, but almost a full exit. There's a very small percentage of financial interest left in the company. Absolutely, I'm still enjoying the non-exec role, still getting involved with the growth of the company, and it's been superb to see. Maybe it's consequences of me leaving, but continued fast growth and huge international expansion over the last few years.
No, fantastic. A very unusual story, I would say. I remember the innovation at the time around the exit and the MBO, but great foresight, I would say, to recognise that you needed an MD in place to drive that business forward, to allow you to step out. HGKC works a lot with owners and founders around that process. Most people find that very challenging. And clearly, if you don't do that, there's no value in the business. If you're still in running it, you can't leave it. Yeah, I think a fascinating story. If you could sum up one takeaway, one key message for founders that are growing their businesses at the moment, but have an eye to exit at some point, what message would you give them?
It's definitely long-term planning, preparing the business to make sure there's no skeletons in the cupboard. And I think the best way of doing that is to get a copy of a due diligence questionnaire that maybe an acquiring company would be using, to understand what questions they're going about your finances, your market, your customers, your systems. Everything has to be squeaky clean, and that includes looking at commercial due diligence, your liabilities that you have in your contracts. If you're going for a trade sale, the due diligence process generally is used to price chip, and therefore it's definitely worthwhile investing in that upfront planning and decent advisors prior to an exit, because that pays for itself come the value you get on your exit.
Yeah, I not surprisingly would agree with all of that. As a business advisor working in this space, but no, it's great to hear. Let's just have a think a bit more about the business. And you talked a bit earlier about innovation in the business in particular, and it feels like that's been key to your ethos all the way through and formed the basis of the success of the business. And apart from the fact that innovation sits in the name of Viper Innovations, could you talk to us about the approach to innovation? And I believe what you have a structured pipeline.
Yeah, we've been innovating from day one, and the business started, it was bootstrapped, but everything we earned went into product development or research and development. We were always very proud as to how much we were actually spending on research and development. And it's something you can never stop. Patents run out, your competitors are also innovating. So once you've set up an innovation process, you can get off the treadmill if you want the company to continue growing and expanding. To start with, I would say it's relatively easy because we had a very simple policy. We spoke to our clients, and because we knew the industry, maybe we knew the answers before we asked a question, but we were very much asking our clients what their problems were, what was stopping them sleeping at night. And then we used to go away and brainstorm what skill set, what can we design or develop to take that problem away or to mitigate the problem. And that led us to a number of products which were successful and the company has built, and we have a huge number of patents. What I will say is not every single patent is commercially viable that we had in those early days, because again, some clients would maybe tell you their particular problem, which in hindsight maybe was not an industry-wide problem. So you ended up with a solution to a single client. So that worked for us, but wasn't an ideal model. Where we are at the moment, we have more of a dedicated R&D team, but we have a more structured gate system so that ideas, developments, products, projects can be cut at a number of different gates. The first gate is clearly, do we want to spend a little bit of money investigating this? And then it goes on, how much more do we want to spend? We need the management team check that the market research has been done, there is a market, that you've got a commercially viable product, etc., etc. And if anywhere along that road it's decided that it's not worth spending more money, then the whole program is cut. So you can imagine you end up with a funnel of ideas which get filtered down, and we don't end up with just one, but there's a whole series of parallel developments going on at any one time, and that goes through a formal process. On top of that, you're also looking at how your existing products and solutions ideas can be moved to different sectors. So you could be innovating in a completely different sector or industry, which is well known in a different one. And that brings different challenges. So you may have to go out and pay for market research in a sector of which you have no experience. I guess innovating in a sector of which you are familiar and already working is different to trying to innovate in a new sector or a new industry for yourselves. But anyway, that's a very broad brush approach to how we do it. As we've grown, it is key also that if you've got a product line which is generating revenue and it's protected because of a patent, you always have to bear in mind that it's only have a certain lifetime, and 20, 25 years time, you need to have something else. It's a bit like the medicines that have a shelf life in terms of patent protection, and you have to keep bringing out a new product to keep the business going. So it's continual investment. It's like marketing. It's continual investment, that's for sure.
Yeah, really interesting. And again, that gated process, I'm presuming, meant that you could manage your risk around getting too far down a track without having controlled it in the right way. So you haven't overspent on something which hasn't got the value in it.
That is the plan of the process. And also it's trying to avoid lost opportunity. You don't want staff working on products or even processes which are of no long-term benefit to the company. You know, the other thing, that the government do encourage you to innovate and file patents. There is lots of tax breaks from R&D tax credits for your actual innovation expenditure. And then if you have products or services that are based on a UK filed or granted patent, you can benefit from lower corporation tax through the patent box system. The UK gets a lot of criticism in terms of its investment in innovation, but the tax regime available certainly does encourage investment in research and development.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I think it also adds value in terms of exit potentially. If you were looking at a trade sale, if you've got
Absolutely.
IP in the business, there's also value there, isn't there? So always
But yeah, it's also important to point out, though, that innovation isn't just in products and services for your clients. I've seen an awful lot of innovation internally, actually, in terms of our own processes and what we're doing and the use of other people's innovation. I guess a classic one is AI, which all businesses should be innovating with or utilizing to improve their own processes.
yes, indeed. I was going to ask you about AI. We can't not talk about it, can we? Has that had an impact at VIPO in terms of how you're approaching innovation?
Absolutely. It's had an impact on the entire business. I'm not sure there's any departments not using AI. And of course, our services, so we're supplying solutions to our clients as well with AI embedded. We're a user of AI in terms of everything from management tools to within our engineering departments, generating software, analyzing data, reports, doing research for us, right through to, as I say, embedding AI in some of the data which we're extracting from our clients' sensors and then providing them back value add in our own delivery. So yeah, it's fully embedded. Obviously, as a business, we have AI policies, but companies who are not seeing the benefits or using AI will, I believe, fall behind just from an efficiency perspective.
No, absolutely. I wonder now if this would be a good point to talk about people. And we certainly at HGKC, we believe people are key to success in business. And I was really struck by the statement on your website. You talk about bright minds being your greatest asset. And a lot of people think that AI and people are opposite ends of the spectrum, really. So I think, just wonder how easy or difficult it's been for you to attract the talent you've needed over the years and how locations played into that.
So that does vary from year to year and role to role. In the past, when we were primarily operating in the oil and gas industry, when there was very high oil prices and the North Sea was booming, it was very difficult to get experienced engineers from a subsea background. And I guess in the early, and probably most startups will find this, that it's very difficult to encourage future employees to leave an established business and take a risk with a small startup on the basis that the government announced that 1 in every 3 startups have folded within 3 years. So a lot of our early staff, it was a gamble for them, as it was for us setting up the business. And we did find that we were maybe taking on the single individuals or those who were married with a partner also having an income, just so that their own salaries were not so critical on keeping the lights on in the house. But of course, as we've moved on, we're a very successful company, good employer with, I guess, a track record. And I think it's become easier to attract both engineers and obviously the business. We've got about 90 people in the business and maybe 30 of them are engineers, and the rest, obviously, all the other normal aspects of a company you might expect. What we are focused on is the retention, the environment for the staff. We have a CSR program, not just for the community, but involving the staff and making sure that the packages and benefits for the staff are correct. So it's expensive when you lose a member of staff and you have to replace them. And to be honest, you're better off spending more on your staff and making sure they want to stay. And to a large extent, as long as the work is interesting and engaging and the environment is correct. So it's very key to us to build an environment in which the staff are happy. And as I say, I like to think we've done a number of things over the years to do that. But yeah, generally, the pipeline of graduates, again, we're lucky within the commuting area of North Somerset, both from South Wales, Bristol, Bath. If you actually look at where our staff are based or their home is, it's from Gloucestershire, down to Devon, to Wales, to Swindon. So the catchment area, that's just from the Portishead office, I should add, ignoring the other offices that the business has. But obviously the majority of them are Portishead, Clevedon based, or walking distance or cycling distance to the business.
Yeah, really interesting. As you say, much better to focus on keeping the staff that you have rather than having to attract new ones. And they give more of themselves if they're happy and engaged in the business as well, don't they? That's
Absolutely.
so you get better performance overall. So yeah, really interesting. Thank you. I wonder now if we should move on to kind of the more challenging side of business right now. And I wonder what the most pressing challenges are that VIBO's facing at the moment, whether that be skills or recruitment or infrastructure or indeed anything else.
At the moment, and probably for the past couple of years, it's really been macroeconomics, global related changes, which probably affects every business, doesn't matter where they are. For us, 40–50% of our revenue is overseas. So we do trade across a number of regions. That brings challenges with, I guess, maintaining, I don't know, the right tax regimes in the different countries, permanent establishments in these different regions. And as I say, the challenges we have tend to be related to setting up organizations for the first time in different countries. So it's a global footprint, and associated with that, the exchange rates that we've seen going all over the place, the new taxes which Mr. Trump is bringing in for selling into the US. So I wouldn't say that our biggest challenge is in relating to skills, recruitment, infrastructure, or something local. I think our challenges would be the same no matter where we were in the country.
Interesting. So I was going to ask you if you think there's anything that could be done locally more to support growth and innovation, but I'm getting from you a sense actually that we're looking at a national and an international context for you, or is there something you think that could be done?
I think if I was to say, how would we encourage innovation or tech growth, I will focus on in Somerset, North Somerset. I think if I was in charge and I had the budget, I would be establishing some tech innovation hubs. At the end of the day, if you look at most of the successful companies, most of them have been university spin-outs. And when I say tech hub, I don't know, a tech incubator, so it has supporting services around it. There's no reason why Somerset couldn't have a unicorn company based here. It's great to see what's happening outside Bridgewater with Gravity, and I think that shows when you have a focus to do something, have an investment, it can be made to work. And we've seen in Bristol that some of the hubs, the incubators that have been created have spun out some hugely valuable companies and importantly creating high value employment. So it's setting the right environment to do that. And I think you have to invest in that type of thing to have a long-term gain. And maybe the economic environment at the moment for the councils is challenging enough that the investment is difficult.
Yes, indeed. Although a lot of the work that we do in Somerset fits very neatly within the government's industrial strategy. If that remains in place for the next few years, we'll watch this space as leadership changes nationally. But
I was going to say, if there's more devolution as anticipated, maybe we do get the opportunity in this region.
Yeah, absolutely. That's great. Thank you. And so a final question for you. We've been asking everyone who's joined us for these podcasts, what message would you like to send to young people leaving school and thinking about the job market right now?
I guess my recommendation is to go into an apprenticeship rather than straight to university now. And a lot of people are going to challenge that, but you can do degrees from within companies. You can continue. And if you're going to employ someone and they come to you with a degree, having only gone to university versus having a degree in parallel, having 5 years work experience, you're going to go for the one with the work experience and the degrees. But not everyone needs degrees. Not every role needs a degree. It's a challenging environment out there, I think, for graduates trying to get jobs. So you're much better, I think, trying to get the job, and preferably trying to get a job that is offering an apprenticeship or progressing you to a degree whilst being paid. A degree without a student loan debt is better than a degree with that student loan debt, that's for sure.
Yes, I think that's a great piece of advice, and echoes conversations we've been having in this household, as a complete personal aside. But no, Neil, that's been a really interesting whistle-stop tour through the history of Viper and your own story and some of the challenges and opportunities that you're seeing in the market for yourselves, but also more broadly at the moment. So I really thank you for your time in recording this podcast, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you very much. I really enjoyed it. Speak soon.
Thank you.